Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Thank you very much for joining Quantum-Latino today. I'm truly pleased to have among us Dr. Yaakov Weinstein. I had the pleasure of meeting him a few years ago as one of the leading figures in our field, both in terms of scientific research and publishing, as I will say. I'll talk about in detail in a second. But before introducing him, Yaakov, thank you very much indeed for accepting our invitation. It's a real pleasure to have you among us.
Thank you. It's an honor and a privilege to be here.
Thanks. Well, Dr. Yaakov Weinstein heads MITRE's Quantum Technologies Group, coordinating the 15-member team in support of the U.S. government in all areas of quantum, including quantum computing, quantum sensing, and quantum communications and networks. Dr. Weinstein received his Ph.D. in nuclear sciences and engineering from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and was awarded the National Research Council Research Associateship at the Naval Research Laboratory. Aside of MITRE, Dr. Weinstein is the editor-in-chief of the Springer Journal Quantum Information Processing and an editor of the Quantum Science and Technology book series. His talk is entitled Quantum Information Processing, an Attempt at Becoming a Transformative Journal. And I pass it on to you, Yaakov. Thank you very much again for being here.
Great. Thank you so much, Salvador. Again, I really appreciate the invitation, and thank you all for coming to the session and taking a few minutes of your time to hear what I'd like to say. And I must say I'm particularly pleased to be in today's session. Not that I don't appreciate the science and everything that went on yesterday. Of course, it's wonderful and it's important, but I'm really glad to see the growth of the quantum ecosystem. And hopefully we can make this a little bit collaborative and trying to figure out whether a journal, the journal that I'm the editor-in-chief for is Quantum Information Processing, but a journal in general, what role that has in the quantum ecosystem. And specifically, can a journal become transformative? Can it really affect the quantum ecosystem? Or is the job of a journal simply to broadcast results that have been discovered by others? So now, as I mentioned, I'm the editor-in-chief for the Quantum Information Processing Journal, which is a Springer journal. As part of my job as editor-in-chief, I have to brag a little bit about the journal. So if you don't mind excusing me for doing that for a few minutes before we try to go from a journal per se into what perhaps is a transformative journal. So Quantum Information Processing is a high-impact journal for quantum information, which is, of course, as everyone here knows, a growing field, a field that we'd like to continue to see growth in. As a journal, and hopefully as all journals would like to do, we'd like to broadcast scientific results, preferably in a clear and straightforward manner, so that people from throughout the world can listen, can read, can understand what's been done by other scientists. That is done through the typical peer review process. We pride ourselves in finding good reviewers, ones that can give positive feedback, not just in terms of saying something is good, but also in terms of constructive feedback, so that a partnership can be formed between authors and reviewers to hopefully bring out the best science possible for the world. In general, we like to see quantum information processing as a partnership between authors and reviewers, as I mentioned, between editors such as myself, such as Salvador, in really trying to broadcast the best science in order to continue to see growth in quantum information. One of the things that quantum information processing has done, I believe we were one of the first to do so, was to actually start a classification scheme within quantum, while to the outside, people, at least here in the United States, people that I speak to, refer to quantum as some kind of general field. Oh, you do quantum. For those who are more initiated, for those who are involved in the field, understand that this is multifaceted, multidisciplinary, and therefore it's necessary to break down the field into smaller bits in order to ensure that the best reviewers can be found, that the best science can be broadcast, and so on and so forth. If we turn to some stats with respect to quantum information processing, we have an impact factor of about 2.35, a 5-year impact factor of 2.29. We currently receive more than 800 submissions a year, which has obviously been significantly growing over the past few years. We had more than 200,000 downloads of articles on our website in 2021. And our submission to first decision is about 3 months. We also have the possibility of open access for those who are interested. That certainly increases the popularity of the articles. We see more downloads of people who opt for open access, and more citation to those to those articles. One of the things that we've tried to do at Quantum Information Processing, when I first joined Quantum Information Processing, it was very US-based. We have tried to expand throughout the world, both in terms of our associate editors and our editorial board. The associate editors are listed there. So we're very fortunate to have Salvador join us just a couple of months ago from Mexico. And recently we've added associate editors from China, from India, from Russia, from Japan, and from the UK. And we're very glad to be able to do that in order to, again, make sure that we're serving the entire world as best as possible in terms of bringing the science forward to scientists everywhere. Our editorial board, again, includes people from numerous different countries, including Austria, Canada, Finland, in addition to the countries that I mentioned before. Again, we hope that our editorial board, our associate editors, can help bring forward science that's produced in their home country through quantum information processing to be broadcast throughout the world. We have a Twitter account, which unfortunately has been somewhat dormant since I've been very busy, since lots of people who are probably listening to me at the moment send me lots of papers, which kind of takes my time away from doing things like Twitter, but that's something we hope to revive. And that starts us into this following question. Can quantum information processing or some other journal become transformative? Or rewording that, can a journal play not just a passive role in terms of broadcasting, but an active role in terms of growing a field, being able to expand an ecosystem? And that's the question that I'd like to take a few minutes to address. Again, this is not something that I can do alone or that I would like to do alone. We are looking for assistance. We are looking for people who would like to be part of a transformative journal in hopes that this will work. But there's no guarantee that it will. So let's start with the role of a peer-reviewed journal. So again, as I quickly mentioned before, the role of a peer-reviewed journal is to provide a forum for scientists to share impactful results with their colleagues. Obviously, it's not possible for a scientist to call everybody on the telephone or necessarily write emails. A journal gives a place where everyone can look towards so that they can see the newest scientific results. A journal, as opposed to something like an archive, can ensure quality of the results such that readership is confident that when they pick up an article, they know that it's a useful article, it's a quality article. I can't promise that every single article that's published in any journal is always good, but that is that layer of peer review ensures a quality metric for the articles that are published. In addition, the editorial staff at Springer ensures that the articles that we publish are legible, that they're readable. We're very fortunate at Quantum Information Processing to have many non-native English speakers submit articles. And while many of them have excellent English skills and write better than many people for whom English is their native tongue, unfortunately, that's not globally true. And so we have an excellent editorial staff to work with authors to ensure that the results are clearly presented and understandable to others. And in addition, a journal provides an opportunity for scientists to receive feedback on their results, hopefully constructive feedback. That's what we'd like to do at Quantum Information Processing, so that, again, as I mentioned before, we can have some sort of partnership between authors and reviewers, but with the goal of bringing out the best science. So that's the typical role of a peer-reviewed journal. And now we can ask the question, what would make a journal transformative? how can, again, a journal like Quantum Information Processing really affect the field in an active way? And so these are my ideas. These are not necessarily the only ideas that are good. I'm sure there are wonderful ideas that other people can think of, and I'd certainly like to hear from anybody who has any ideas. I'm not saying that even all of these ideas will be successful or that we've tried any of them. We've tried some of them to various degrees of success, but again, we'd like to continue pushing this forward. So number one, a journal can be transformative if it can catalyze new research areas. Okay, so exactly how we do that, we'll have to think about for in a moment. But but there may be some research areas within quantum that that the editorial board or that the editors feel perhaps is underrepresented, that can use further exploration, and perhaps there's a role that the journal can play in pushing that forward. Number two, to increase interest in a given field. How can a journal extend beyond the scientific, the scientists, those who are familiar with the field, and reach the public as a whole, reach students, be able to advocate for support for scientists, in other words, to reach government? How can, or is it even possible for a journal to reach beyond just scientists in order to grow interest in the field, in order to get more students in the field, in order to grow funding in the field? Is that something that's possible for a journal to do? Or is that something that needs to be done on the scientific, by scientists themselves, by industry, or by government? Does the journal have a role there? Can a journal be a connector between academia, industry, and government? Hopefully, right now, today, I'm speaking to people from who represent all of these different areas. Does the journal have the role in making that connection? Or maybe not. And then finally, can a journal serve as a forum for finding collaborations? Is it possible that through a journal, two scientists who perhaps were not familiar with each other can become familiar with each other, realize they have common interests, and that by working together, they can bring even more and better science to the fore? Okay, so I see there's a question in the chat. So I apologize, I haven't been following it, but let me take a quick look. Do I think it would be helpful to include a scheme or a scope for quantum interface? This is in order to consider the multiple system potential. It may help to grow the journal. Absolutely. So I do think that the more careful a journal is with defining its space, the better it is for everybody. And that comes in a number of different ways. Number one, to clearly define a scope. So, for example, there are certain papers that I get in certain areas that I know are outside of scope, and I can state it explicitly. But the better any journal defines its scope, this is again my opinion, the better science we can broadcast. And then within the scope, again, to be able to break up the field, the chosen field of that journal into some number of classifications. Now, obviously, we can't have a zillion classifications because you get too particular, but into some number of classifications, I think that can be helpful in terms of, number one, ensuring or demonstrating to scientists that the editors are aware of the field, are involved in the field, number one. Number two, also in defining what's important. And we have not done this, but something that I've been thinking about is we currently at Quantum Information Processing do not have a classification for quantum thermodynamics. We have shunted it under theory of quantum information. I think we probably should change that. And by defining a classification in that way, something that I would hope would happen is that researchers are aware that, number one, the journal is interested in that topic, but number two, researchers who perhaps may not be as knowledgeable in that topic can go and explore that particular topic and perhaps find scientific interest there. So I do think that's very important. And again, so all of these, I think, can be useful roles, perhaps, for a journal in the greater quantum ecosystem that we're talking about at the conference today. So how do we do this? How can we catalyze new research? How can we serve the public? How can a journal actually become transformative? So, and again, these are my ideas. These are not certainly not the only ideas that are out there. And again, if anyone has any ideas they'd like to share, please do so. by writing perspectives on the field. This is something that I try to encourage people to do. I've tried to encourage people to write a perspective article on quantum walks, for example, and everybody turns around and tells me, well, Salvador did such a good job, 10 years ago in writing his review of quantum walks, there's nothing left to be done. And I'm like, no, Salvador did that 10 years ago. Salvador's paper is one of the best that we've ever published on quantum information processing. But I want somebody to write a new paper on perspectives on quantum walks. If anybody out there is interested, by the way, please let me know, because I actually do want one. But by writing perspective type articles, which are not necessarily comprehensive review, but a review plus laying out directions for the field to go in the future, that's one way that we'd like to catalyze a new research in a given area. Number two, to highlight new areas by, as I just mentioned, putting in new categories, something like quantum thermodynamics is an example that I'm throwing out, to demonstrate to scientists that's an area that we're interested, that the journal is interested in, that's an area that scientists will be able to publish in. That's, I think, another way to highlight new areas within quantum, in order to catalyze research in those areas. Again, it's just a couple of ideas. When it comes to increasing interest in the field as a whole, when it comes to public interests, obviously social media plays a large role. It could be Twitter, Facebook, or whatever everyone's favorite social media supporter is. And here, again, I think we have to be creative. Simply announcing the latest results that have occurred within our journal, that's something that certainly can be done, and perhaps that would garner some interest from scientists who are already interested in, who are already involved in quantum information processing. If we want to extend beyond the scientists, then we need to highlight other important aspects in the field, be it new corporations, be it industry, be it new results, whatever it happens to be. A social media account from a journal that goes beyond the journal, I believe, can be helpful in garnering public interest as a whole, especially if jargon is avoided, if things can be worded in a way that would be exciting for the public, if tweets, for example, can demonstrate applications that would affect individuals, individuals in the public, laymen, people who are not familiar with quantum. Perhaps that's a way to grow interest in the field as a whole, and thus be able to gain further government interest and hopefully get students interested in the field as well. And so, speaking of students, beyond just trying to broadcast results on social media, talk about the excitement within quantum information on social media, can a journal provide basic overviews of the field? Again, this is something that we've struggled with, something that I've struggled with Springer. Can we find a place for overviews written in terms of a layman? Is there a place for curricula? Is there a place for teaching methods in quantum within the journal? I admit we have not been successful in that as of yet. We have not found a place within the journal in terms of publishing for it. But perhaps as we open up social media accounts, we can try to include some more of that in the journal. However, if we want our field to continue to grow, certainly we need to find not only students, we need to find many students, we need to find the best students. We'd like to entice them to join the quest for quantum information by relaying to them the excitement of the field. And it's hard to do that by taking in even an undergraduate student, certainly not a high school student, and giving them a paper that was published in a peer-reviewed journal. That's not going to be helpful. We need to translate. We need to be able to reach them where they are and relay to them the excitement in the field. Is there a place for a journal to do that? Again, I hope so, but I've not been successful to this point in being able to do so. And then that has in a similar way, serving as an advocate for the field. Let me go back to that. Through government, certainly by if scientists can demonstrate to governments that there is interest in the field as demonstrated by the existence of journals, that's one thing. But is there more of a role that a journal can play with government agencies who provide funding, demonstrating to them the importance of the field, the excitement of the field, the talking about the great dedication of scientists in the field in order to convince government sponsors of the importance in quantum information? Again, I believe that's an open question. Going on to connecting industry, academia, government, is there a way that a journal can provide a forum for people in those three sometimes distinct areas to meet, to come together, to discuss? Is there a way for a journal to arrange information such that would be useful for industry and government? It's very easy for a journal to arrange information in a way that's useful for academia. Academics know how to use journals. They know how to, they know how these things work. They know how to search. Does industry and government, can they do that as well? Sure, sure, many of them can. Sure, many people who come from academia can. But what about the government agent who is not particularly familiar with the field? How does that person learn about the newest results? How do people in industry who were hiring from the business perspective, how do they get educated in the field? Is there a place for a journal to serve in that capacity? And finally, in terms of providing a forum for fine collaborations, can we highlight areas where authors are looking to be collaborative? Is there a way to do that? And in a moment, I'm going to show you one way that we're trying to do so at Quantum Information Processing. Again, these are some of my ideas. I'd love to hear any ideas that anybody has in a way that a journal can have impact on the quantum ecosystem. Please feel free to email me, email Salvador, and we'd certainly like to hear any ideas. And with that, I'd like to specifically highlight some of the really great efforts that scientists in Latin America have provided for quantum information processing, specifically for our journal. Again, this is not in any way to speak broadly in the field, only what I've been able to see. Quantum information processing receives really exceptional support from Latin America. And that is in all areas, both in terms of submission, in terms of peer review, and in terms of leadership. Brazil is one of our top 5 countries in terms of simply number of submissions. A few years ago, we were very fortunate that Renato Portugal won the QIP Best Paper Award. That's something that we've unfortunately did not survive COVID, but Best Paper Award is something we'd like to introduce now. But Renato Portugal, and we were able to highlight some of his excellent work on quantum walks. And he was able to, he won the Best Paper Award in 2018. We have some really excellent and dedicated reviewers from Latin America. I have not asked for their permission, so I don't want to name them out loud at the moment. But hopefully we'll have in another forum we can do so. But really there are specific people within Latin America who I know I can always turn to, who I know will write excellent reviews, and I really can, and I personally and QIP as a whole can rely on. We recently appointed Professor Salvador Venegas Andraca as an associate editor to Quantum Information Processing. This has been too long in coming. It was really my pleasure to be able to invite him onto the editorial board. He is very well deserving, and we are constantly looking for new people to contribute to the journal in any way. And we'd also like Latin America and scientists and industry players to be part of what we hope will be make quantum information processing a transformative journal. So let me throw at you the idea that we have. Hopefully it'll be useful. But we are going to be opening very soon. Salvador, I completely forgot what day we decided that's going to open. I apologize. But we're going to open a geography-based topical collection. So topical collections are taking place in quantum information processing of special issues. So there are no more special issues. We're calling them topical collections. And we're going to open a topical collection for Latin America. The idea here is that papers will undergo the same peer review process as any other papers do. This is not a way to get papers through without going through the typical process. Any paper that we receive is going to go through the typical submission and the typical comprehensive peer review that we have for all quantum information processing papers. However, we are going to ask authors who are interested in contributing to this topical collection to please include information, preferably by video, of research interests. What are you doing? What are your collaborators doing? What is your university doing? What is your industry doing? We'd like to know, not for ourselves per se, but we'd like to be able to broadcast that to fellow scientists. We want scientists in Latin America and throughout the world, but this one is geared towards Latin America, to see what their colleagues in other countries are doing, and such that in hopes that they'll be able to find additional collaborators as necessary, understand what's going on in their country, throughout the rest of Latin America, and hopefully also in terms of generating interest in students. And any video or any information submitted about the interests of particular scientists, of particular groups, should be, please, not have too much jargon in it. We want this to be able to understand. We want students to be able to click on these and say, yes, this is what I'd like to do with my career as a scientist. And so we're hopeful that that topical collection in Latin America is where we'd like to start. Hopefully, if successful, we'll be able to extend this to other areas as well. The next area that I'd like to be able to extend to, assuming this is successful, is the Middle East. But we'll see. Any feedback would be more than welcome, but we're hoping that this will help form collaborations throughout Latin America, both within larger countries, but also in smaller countries who perhaps don't have as much support as there are in larger countries within Latin America. We're hoping to be able to make those connections in order to be able to grow quantum information as much as possible within Latin America. Okay, Salvador, I think I'm out of time, but I can talk about what I do at MITRE if you want. What's the call here?
I think that we should stop now because we have some lectures coming. Go ahead, please.
So we're gonna conclude now. Maybe hopefully we'll have some other future event where I can actually talk about some of my research, which is probably not as interesting as yours, but somewhat interesting. But again, quantum information processing is a peer-reviewed journal published by Springer. We're a great journal, I have to say that. We have a high impact factor. We do all sorts of wonderful things. Okay, but we want to be a transformative journal. We'd like to have an impact on the field beyond simply broadcasting scientific results. We're looking for any help that we can get, any ideas, any thoughts. Please share. And if you're willing to volunteer to do stuff, that's great too. And again, I'm happy to announce that we're opening this topical collection for Latin America in order to hopefully foment collaborations between scientists in Latin America and garner student interest and perhaps even government interest as well. So thank you all for your attention, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much indeed, Yaakov, for this fantastic presentation on QIP, for your kind words. And I would like to say two things. The first one is that one of the guest editors, I think you were asking for his name, is Professor Rafael Sotelo from the University of Montevideo. He's also a co-organizer of this event. So that's one thing. And also that, well, there's a question. Let me go to the question by Professor Diego Santiago Alarcón. He says, he's asking, do you think it would be helpful to include a scheme or scope for quantum interface? This in order to consider the multidisciplinary potential of the quantum beyond physics. It may help to grow the journal.
Right. So that's all right. So we have to be a little bit careful about defining some of our terms. So I want to be careful. So if by interface, so if by interface you mean how we connect between qubits, let's say, and conventional computers that allow a human being to actually run a quantum computer. So yes, I think that's an important area. It's something that a question that I deal with all the time. When I speak to people here in the United States government, there will always be conventional computers running quantum computers. There's no such thing as a person becoming quantum and thus being able to interact with a quantum computer. That's impossible. We as in humans will interact with hardware, with conventional computers in order to run quantum computers. And so that interface, anything related to programming, any of that sort, is certainly of interest to quantum information processing as a journal. We haven't quite called it out. We did call out quantum programming and something else, quantum programming languages, and I forgot what the other thing is. But we have something like that called out, though not specifically called quantum interface.
Okay. Yeah, I think that he's basically, I know Diego very well. He and I collaborate on research on quantum biology. So most likely his question was focused towards, say, for example, an analysis of biological data using quantum algorithms or this kind of approach.
Got it. Yeah. So here, you know, we quantum information processing is interested, for example, in machine learning, data analytics, you know, quantum machine learning, quantum data analytics, and the like. There is another Springer journal called Quantum Machine Intelligence, which kind of overlaps a little bit with us, but we're all on good terms, so everything's good. But yes, I mean, I think those areas are certainly of interest.
Okay. Well, I think we have to finish now, unfortunately, because it's been great to listen to all your ideas and what you have shared with us. Yaakov, again, thank you very much from the bottom of my heart. Thanks a lot, and then I'll see you soon.
Thank you, Salvador. Thank you all for listening.
Bye-bye. So now, please, as for the audience, let us get into the virtual space where Dr. Hold on, please, one second. Dr. Deborah Bereviches will deliver her talk. Thank you very much.